Today, Elon Musk is the second richest person in the world, boasting a net worth of $155 billion, 127 of which was made just this year. Now, he's a maverick entrepreneur working on making some of the hardest technological feats possible. But of course, like with any entrepreneur, Elon's journey was by no means smooth and worry-free. From a variety of rocket explosions to Tesla's painful balance sheet, Elon Musk and his investors have poured unreal amounts of money into his vision for the future. But how many billions exactly is this? Starting off, in this video, we'll basically take a look at all of the biggest financial risks Musk took throughout his career. And yes, I understand that these are investments, but it's not like Elon was throwing money at the S&P 500 or Apple today. He was throwing this money at a plethora of startups, which statistically have a 90% chance of failure. So, for the purposes of this video, we'll classify these high-risk investments as money that he was burning. Also, one more thing, this video isn't supposed to hate on the guy by any means. It's just more of a fun video taking a look at the ups and downs of his career. With that being said, just like most people around the world, Elon's first financial liability was, of course, student loans. Musk started his educational journey at Queen's University in Ontario, Canada in 1989. After a couple of years here, Musk would transfer over to University of Pennsylvania in 1992 before graduating in 1997. Though some of this was covered by scholarships, considering that he spent 8 years at university, the student loans were nonetheless quite heavy, coming in at about $100,000. After finishing his studies, however, he didn't get a regular job and try to pay off the loans. Instead, he decided to play it risky with his first startup, Zip2. At the time, Elon didn't have too much money to begin with, so he didn't have to worry too much about losing it. With that being said, Musk started Zip2 with his brother for $15,000, out of which Musk contributed $2,000. Over the next couple of years, it's understood that Zip2 would raise a few $100,000. However, nearly all of this came from venture capitalists. In 1999, Zip2 would be sold for a solid $307 million, and Musk's 7% equity stake would net him $22 million. But he wouldn't be able to keep all of this money because of the taxman. It looks like Elon only invested $2,000 into the company, and even if he somehow invested tens of thousands during its growth phase, the total investment amount is nowhere near $22 million. So basically all of that would be subject to long-term capital gains tax. And considering that anything over $434,000 is subject to the highest rate of 20%, Elon likely gave around $4.4 million to Uncle Sam, leaving him with $17.6 million. This would have been a good time to sit back and relax, but Musk would instantly turn around and invest 10 of those millions into X.com, or what would later become PayPal. It's not clear whether he invested more into the company as needed, so we'll just say that he didn't, as his future endeavors far outweigh this investment anyways. PayPal would eventually be sold to eBay for $1.5 billion in 2002, from which Elon would receive between $165 and $175 million, or about $170 million. Considering that he put $10 million into the business, $160 million of these dollars would be subject to capital gains tax, which comes out to $32 million, pulling his earnings down to $128 million. Combining this with the $10 million he put in, and the $7.6 million that we assumed he kept on the sidelines from the Zip2 acquisition, Elon's net worth should have been about $145.6 million. So, before Elon embarked on his journeys with SpaceX and Tesla, he risked a total of $10.102 million, which left him with upwards of $150 million. Moving on, Elon would turn around and drop $100 million into SpaceX in 2002. And then, right after, he would pour $6.3 million into Tesla in 2004. These couple of years would be some of the roughest in Elon's life, as he would continue to fund these money-losing endeavors year after year after year. Musk would later reveal that by the end of 2008, he was out of money. And if it wasn't for the successful launch of the Falcon 1 rocket and the subsequent contract from NASA, it's quite possible that SpaceX would have shut down. Fortunately, things would work out and Elon would be able to dig himself out of that hole, but in the process, he did apparently risk it all. When Elon says that he had no money left in 2008, I'm going to assume that he means in relation to the money he started with. In other words, it's not like he had a total of $100 in his checking account. Rather, he likely burned through 95 to 98% of the money he started with, and things were looking bleak. If we say that he burned through 95% of his initial capital, Elon would roughly be left with $7.28 million, and he had burned through $138.32 million. Now, you may be thinking that $7.28 million is quite a sum of money, and it is. But $7.28 million doesn't stretch very far in the EV and rocket industries, so from that perspective, he was broke. Adding this $138.32 million to the $10.102 million he risked before SpaceX and Tesla, by 2009, Elon Musk had risked a total of about $150 million. After this point, Elon didn't really invest any money into SpaceX or Tesla, as he didn't have any money left. Though his net worth grew substantially over the next several years, his entire net worth was tied up with these two companies. So, if he wanted to invest more into either of these companies, he would have to liquidate some of his position, which would of course be counterproductive. However, he did have some side endeavors that he would fund. For instance, he threw $10 million at Solar City in 2006. Similarly, it looks like he invested tens of millions into DeepMind. Though we don't know the exact amount, we do know that he made a significant contribution to setting up their $1 billion research lab. So, likely in the tens of millions, if not 100 million. And what about the Boring Company and Neuralink? We know that Musk has poured $100 million into Neuralink and will likely continue to invest hundreds of millions into the company. Likewise, in 2017 alone, the Boring Company raised $113 million, out of which 90% or about $100 million came from Musk. Just adding up the investments into those four companies, we get another $250 million, pushing Musk's total financial risk to $400 million. And let's not forget, that's just known investments into those companies. Elon Musk has likely invested even more into not just those companies, but also other companies that we aren't even aware of. So I think we can safely add another $100 million onto that figure and call it $500 million. The real figure is likely even higher in the several $100 million range, if not low billions, but we'll keep it at $500 million to be conservative. There is one more thing to consider though. That's just how much of his own money that he has risked. As investors have flooded into Tesla and SpaceX, a lot of their money has burned too in the natural process of trial and error. We're not too sure about the financials of Musk's low-key companies, so for this estimate, we'll just stick to Tesla and SpaceX. Starting with SpaceX, we don't know anything about their balance sheets, as they are a private company. But we can take a look at their rocket explosions as well as their cancelled projects. As for rocket explosions, we won't be including explosions during development, as those are to be expected. And as long as development wasn't cancelled, we won't consider the money to be burned. Throughout SpaceX's history, they've actually only had 5 rocket explosions total, with 3 of them being the first 3 launches. Considering that the first 3 were basically funded by Musk, we'll focus on the last 2. Both of the failures in 2015 and 2016 were with the Falcon 9 rocket. And SpaceX has revealed that Falcon 9 launches cost them about $28 million each, thus adding up to $56 million in losses. Aside from this, we also have the loss of the payloads themselves. The first explosion was during a routine space station resupply mission from NASA, so nothing too expensive was destroyed. The second explosion, however, did destroy the MO6 communication satellite, which cost a steep $195 million. Adding that to the cost of the rocket explosions themselves, we have a total of $250 million burned from rocket explosions. Moving on to cancelled SpaceX projects, there are a few projects that SpaceX abandoned like Spaceport America, but they only invested a few million into such projects in the first place, so nothing really major. Thus, we'll say that such failed projects as well as other miscellaneous failures come out to another $50 million, pushing up total investor money burned to $300 million. Taking a look at Tesla on the other hand, this is where the bulk of the losses come in, as Tesla was burning through hundreds of millions of dollars per year for several years. Since going public, Tesla has net quarterly losses as small as $50 million and as large as $2.72 billion. If we add up all of the net losses since going public, we get a massive loss of $26.38 billion. Finally, adding everything up, we get a total of $27.18 billion. So, no doubt, quite a bit of money. On the bright side though, Tesla is worth over $600 billion today, and SpaceX was estimated to be valued at $46 billion in August. So it looks like the massive risks did pay off. But nonetheless, I'm sure it didn't feel too good when he was hundreds of millions of dollars underwater several times throughout his life. What do you guys think about Elon's rocky journey? Comment that down below. Also, drop a like if you guys are glad that Elon went on this journey. And of course, consider joining our Discord community to suggest future video ideas, and consider subscribing to see more questions logically answered. But until then, I'm Hari, and I'll see you guys on the next one.